So we're going to go move forward with our next guest. She's been on the show before. She always comes on the same time of year, right when she's having her Black Child Book Week. So we wanted to have her back again. And I'm very excited to have Veronica Chapman on. I'm excited that you kept going after that first year because a lot of people quit. So welcome back to Black Authors Matter TV.
Thank you so much for having me back.
Yeah, you
Thank
were
you
you
so
were
much.
committed because you kept going. You know, a lot of people do one off. They just do something once, and especially if it's hard, uh, then
Well,
they kind of quit. They abandon it. But you kept going.
well, here's the thing. Black Children's Book Week will keep going even if I stop tomorrow. And that's the
Okay.
brilliance of it. Because for me, so Black Children's Book Week is something, it was a response to, I found that we were doing like so much had so much collective sadness and sorrow and mourning online. And I just kept thinking, life has to be better than this. Like, we can't just spend our whole lives like just really sad about the world and the inhumanity of it all. I was like, we have to carve out time for joy. And I just thought about it because I am a children's book author. I said, I know the joy when Black children, especially, see my books that I wrote for them with characters who look like them. And I know that it's very affirming for them and they feel empowered by that. And what we really need in the world is people who believe in the power of their dreams. And what better tool to use than children's books? So for me, I had no intention of starting Black Children's Book Week. I am an ideas person. I am somebody who, you know, I was like, okay, well, I'm on this earth for a reason. Let me do what I'm here to do. Like, that's just the kind of person I've always been. And one day I was just minding my business, and this idea, it was a divine inspiration. It really came out of, like, I really was doing nothing related to children's books at all. And I just remember Googling it and thinking, like, this has to be already established something in it, and it was not there. And so at that point it became my responsibility. So really what the responsibility is like when you're entrusted with a vision, you have to not be caught up in ego, especially if it's something bigger than you. And I think because Black Children's Book Week, when I presented it, I said, hey, people who are part of my network who follow, my Black baby books platform, I said, you all are authors like me, what our books can do. Well, majority Black authors are part of the community. And I just said, we know the power. And we also know, especially those of us who self-publish, but also traditionally published, but self-publishing is different because we have to find the illustrator, find the editor, find the printer. That's a lot to overcome. And that's my background, right?
And
So
do the
that's a lot.
marketing.
And to the marketing. And what is that? It's activism. So I said, well, who better to bring this idea to that, yes, was entrusted to me, but was meant to share to the community of, you know, Black authors, Black illustrators, and people who are really intentional about publishing Black books. And once I did that, people ran with it. So there's things happening all over the country. I have no direct hand in what's happening. So even if I stop today, it's going to keep going, which is a great thing, I think.
Okay, now tell people for the audience who hasn't heard about it before and didn't see your other interviews last year or the year before, what is Black Children's Book Week?
So, Black Children's Book Week is the global celebration of Black children and the power of their representation in children's books. Because I have traveled a lot and I've seen that every place where anti-Blackness is a global thing. And when I travel, I see the power. I've done book readings in other countries. I've seen the power of, even if we don't share the same language, kids are like, that looks like me on the page. And one thing I noticed is that because the internet is a place where you don't know where people are following you from. So this idea of the need to celebrate our children and affirm them using children's books, it resonates no matter where we are. So that's why you have people in Canada, hosting events. You have people historically, there have been events in like Nigeria, Ghana, Austria, wherever our children are, people who have become aware of it, they're like, oh, we have to do something. And there's a checklist. We try to make it easy. We try to make it easy and accessible. Some people host events, and that's amazing. And I've been tagged in events where there's like 16 Black authors at an event, and they have these gigantic events that are so inspiring. And then also another way to celebrate is to check out a Black book or request a Black book at your local library or shop Black bookstore. Last year was the first year we started capturing data. We found that people spent thousands of dollars at Black bookstores during Black Children's Book Week. That's one of the ways that they celebrate it. Another thing you could do, I tell people all the time, keep it simple. Post a Zoom reading for the kids in your family. Like if you didn't get a chance to have a family reunion or if y'all haven't gotten together in a long time, invite the children in your family or your extended families for reading. Read them a Black book. So it's really accessible. You don't have to have a lot of money to celebrate it. There's nothing keeping you from doing what we're asking people to do during the week.
Okay, so is and when does it start and when does it end? What week is it?
Sure, it always starts the last Sunday in February.
Okay, so
And
that would
you know,
be the 23rd.
it started on the 23rd, and this year it ends on March 1st.
Okay, so we're in the
Yeah.
week right now.
We're in the and if you search the hashtag like Black Children's Book Week on Instagram, you will
Hmm.
see amazing things happening. And some people have added, if you follow Black Children's Book Week on Instagram, some people have added us as collaborators, so you can see if we're sharing what they're doing. So if you even look on our page, you'll be able to follow the people who are organizing and see like what's going on. And then on our website, which you can find at blackchildrensbookweek.org, there's a button. The first button says how to celebrate. And if you click on that button, you'll get to a couple places. One, you can register for events, and we have a collaborative calendar on our website. So everyone doesn't register. Some people, when they find out about it, they act real quick. They're like, okay, I gotta get something, but they may not have time to register it. But there are events that people have registered on the calendar, so you can search by state, and you can see what's going on in your state. Also, you can download the celebration checklist, which has all the ways that you can celebrate. One other thing that I don't even know if I mentioned as much last year, and people fuss at me all the time, is that when I launched Black Children's Book Week, I also launched a virtual museum called the Black Children's Book Museum. And that is where we house the sponsors of Black Children's Book Week. So because I got the idea in September and it launched in February, it's not like I had money. I didn't have money set aside to launch something like this. There's like technology behind it and there's all this stuff that had to be registered. And I remember people kept saying, like, how can we help you? How can we give us, what can we pay for? Like, how do we sponsor? And I was just like, okay, like,
You
let
have
me
to come
think.
up with
Like,
something.
I had to come up with something. And you know what? I'm so grateful. I came up with something that people love. It is gorgeous. It is called the Black Children's Book Museum. If you go to the same tab, like how to celebrate, one of the options is to visit the Black Children's Book Museum. It's located in the metaverse. So basically you can create an avatar and it looks like you're walking through the museum. So you'll see like the books of the people who sponsored Black Children's Book Week this year. And there's also a wall dedicated to people who donated and their names are on the wall. And it's shoppable. So that means that as you're walking through the museum, you can click on an image and you can learn more about like the synopsis of the book. And you can click view, and that takes you to the shopping page that the author provided us at the point of when they submitted their content. And it is really, really beautiful. And I'm not saying that because I designed it. I'm saying that because people are, I mean, it is beautiful, but the feedback has been so cool. Kids are like really loving it. And if you have kids who are like really into technology and they have these like VR glasses, they're like these really giant, I don't have any, but it really
I've
makes you feel
seen
like
them.
you've seen them, right?
Hmm.
It really makes you feel like you're inside the museum. And I feel like I need to go buy some just to have that experience. Because for me, because for everyone else, you can click on the museum in our website and it'll take you to the desktop. Or, if you're, excuse me, if it take you to the website where you can go visit it if you're on a desktop or a laptop. Alternatively, if you want to look on a mobile device, the the platform that it's on has an app. It's free to download, and you can also visit the museum on your cell phone or iPad.
Now, what's your background? What like led you on this path to where you ended up being the creator of the Black Children's Book Week?
Well, I'm an ideas person. So I have a company called Box Out, which means to think outside the box to design creative solutions for social change. And for that, that means it's kind of really simple. Like you know how your lived experience determines a lot of your of like the things, the ideas you may come up with. So um if you're coming up with ideas that are authentic, right? So sometimes we see things that are inauthentic and you're like, why are you pretending like you're that person when you're not? And then you feel like it's inauthentic and you just like, okay, whatever. But otherwise, if you're creating from an authentic space, it's usually that something happens in my case, something happens and then I get an idea to address it. So I had no aspirations of being a children's book writer. What happened was I was very creative when I was at Spelman. I went to Spelman undergrad.
Okay.
I started a chapter of organization that had design creative ways to teach children about entrepreneurship. And from that experience, I said, okay, I know I don't want to be a teacher in a school, but I love finding creative ways to get kids excited about learning different things. And so I kind of just like started doing that. I went to grad school in Boston. I created this company when I was doing educational workshops for teenagers, and I would go to like after school programs and libraries, and I would create really fun, dynamic workshops. So like even though it was after school, the kids would be so captivated by the concepts. I call it like spoonful of sugar. Like they'd be learning, but they'd be having fun, so they didn't mind. so, so after like having to travel through traffic to get to the libraries and after school programs, it became like unsustainable, energetically unsustainable. So I said, well, how can I reach kids at an earlier age to make sure? So everything builds off of everything else. How can I reach kids at an earlier age to make sure they believe in themselves? So I said, aha, I can write a children's book that makes children believe in themselves. So then I published a book called I Know I Can. And that did really, really well. And it was really impactful. And people started writing and saying, like, oh my gosh, I don't know what you put in this book, but my kid, I used to think they had high self-esteem. Now I can't do nothing with them. I was like, good. So then I started doing that. When I was promoting my book, I Know I Can, people started asking me, like, hey, how do I find other books with Black characters? And at that time, there weren't a lot of platforms around to discover books with Black characters. There are way more now, thank goodness, way more. But at that time, they weren't. And so then I created a platform called Black Baby Books to make it easier to discover children's books with Black characters. I started on social media and then I built a website to just have a space of my own because we don't own these social media sites.
Right.
Um, and yeah, and so, and the platform kept growing and people kept messaging me like, oh, I'm so glad I can find stuff in my class, I can find stuff for my kids. And then really like in 2020 when we're witnessing all these people being murdered at the hands of police, and then people are having an awakening that lasted very long, but they had an awakening for a moment. Um, all these people started following Black Baby Books, and I was like, this is awkward because like who are these people? I don't know. It was just like all of a sudden, next thing I knew, I went from like 80,000 followers to like 120,000 followers. And it was kind of strange. And, um, and a lot of people like to talk about how many followers they have. And that's great. I'm more interested in what I can do with followers. So I was like, okay, well, what more can I do? So I have this platform now. And I said, everybody's sad online and everyone's in mourning and witnessing death. And it's just terrible. And I said, we just need something joyful. And that's when like I said, I was sitting at my desk one day and the idea for Black Children's Book Week came up. And I said, that's what I can do with the followers. This community that's part of my community, like authors and illustrators. I said, I can help mobilize us to add some joy into this atmosphere to honor the children, our children, and our inner children. Because I also learned by publishing a book that adults would buy my book and they'd be like, oh, I'm going to give it to my cousin. Then they read it. They'd be like, yeah, I'm keeping this one. I'll have to get another cousin. So another book for my cousin. So I just remember like that first year I gave, like I had a town hall that I hosted online and I invited like 400 people came. And I said, hey, I gave a whole presentation like this is the vision that I have. This is the idea. These are the people who are helping me like, spread the word. And while I was presenting, my sister who was in attendance, she said, girl, like everybody in the comments they were organizing, they were like, who's in Virginia? Who's in Maryland? Who's in Georgia? Who's in, LA? And that's what happened. And then the other great thing that's come out of Black Children's Book Week, the feedback that we've gotten is that authors are building community and they're they're meeting each other, they're working together, they're sharing resources. So that's why now you have these Black Children's Book Week events happening all over, and there's like 20 authors together. A lot of, and you know what else happened? See, this is why we have to act on our ideas and our visions. Like, if you're sitting on an idea, don't sit on it any longer. Act on it right now. You know what else happened since Black Children's Book Week? There have been organizations that have like formed in certain places to provide more events in their communities around literacy and Black children's books. There's one in DC, there's one in Oklahoma, there's one in um, I, I think they're in Kentucky, like all these organizations. And a lot of these people met at the event that I initially had, or they've met like since then. And a lot of them started organizing around Black Children's Book Week. And then they decided, like, hey, let me start something that extends beyond the week. And like, how great is that? So that's one of my favorite things, I
Yeah, one thing about the net is, and this is something that was apparent to us early on. We started our business, which our overall umbrella company that we started first is
think.
cushcity.com. And we
Hmm.
started that in December of 98. That the net was just taking off.
Wow.
Well, that's how our company is 25 years old. Well, 26 years old. And
Wow, that's a big deal.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. We
That's amazing.
started, and it was a divinely inspired idea. I was at church, one at a workshop, and the idea hit me. I went home and told my husband, and because and one thing that we were good at as a couple is the division of labor. You know, some people
Hmm.
aren't able to do that, but my husband is tech, and so I'm more on the marketing administrative, the
Hmm.
organizing. So we decided we had a game plan, and in 6 weeks our website was up.
See, that's
6
amazing.
weeks
That's what I'm
with
looking for.
with
That's
no
what I'm looking
money, with no money.
for.
I
I
mean,
love
no,
that.
like no funding, none of that. We
Hmm.
already we had something we were already doing, and we just used those same resources. We were in a different business, but we since had shut that down and did
Hmm.
Kush City. But the first order we got, and this is why I'm saying the global aspect of the net was apparent early on, because the first order we got was from Alabama. I remember that because that was like, wow, we're reaching people all over.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
of course, in the early days of the internet, we didn't have all the stuff we have now. We didn't have Zoom and all the
Hmm.
apps, and it's a lot has changed. But the concept of it being global
Hmm.
it has been sustained the entire time. Of course, the way you access it, because when we first started, the dial-up was what people used to go online.
Yes. I remember. I'm the age of the dial-up. I think I'm
Okay,
probably like the first generation that had the "you got mail." Like that was my generation, born in
okay,
the '80s. Yeah.
okay. so, and then it went. I think we had the dial-up. Then we had a T1. I think it was the T1 next, and then it was something else that started with a D. Anyway, that's the Wi-Fi took over. So it keeps changing and evolving, and then the cell phone wasn't a thing.
Hmm.
Everything evolved, and then everything became part of the cell phone. But
Yep.
people who don't know the trajectory of it, how the whole thing evolved, it started with very minimal tech. And now on your phone, you can basically do everything. I don't like doing everything on my phone
Right.
because I
Right.
don't like the small screen. I'd rather be on a laptop. Uh, you know, I do quick things on my phone, checking things.
Hmm.
And even when I'm like commenting on something, because I'm a fast typist, but I need a keyboard. I can't
Hmm.
do it on my phone. But you have to be willing, and I say all that to say, when you get an idea, especially if you believe it's divinely inspired, you have to act on it.
So true.
And you can't just sit on it. Because if it's divine, it'll work. And we're
Absolutely.
still here.
Absolutely.
So,
And everything you need will be provided. You may not get everything you
yes,
want. Like this stuff I
yes.
applied for grants, they're like, yeah, no. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. My people will take care of it. Don't worry about it. I'll get it. I'm like, I'll get it some way.
That's true. And in the early days, a lot of, I don't know if you even remember some of the early companies. Um, and I'll say this is in the late 90s, early 2000s. So there were a lot of Black startups that were getting traction. There was Black Planet,
Yep.
Black Voices, there was Net Noir, and there was a like a Black tech convention or conference called Moby. It was
I've never heard
MOBE.
of
I
that.
forgot what it stood for. The
Hmm.
first year it was in Chicago, and then it was in LA. But I went to them, and I met all those people. Yeah, I met all the people who started those companies. And a lot of those companies, they got a lot of money. They're gone now. A
Yeah.
lot of the
Yeah.
ones that got a lot of money, they went through all that money, but they really didn't have a plan to survive. And you have to also be willing to pivot. You have
Hmm.
to pivot with where things are going. But I met all those people. Some of them, the only one that's still around is Black News. I don't know if you're
Yep.
familiar with Black News. Dante
I
Lee. I
am.
met him
Yep.
at Moby in the early 2000s, and he's one of the only ones that's left still standing. And at that time, it was kind of funny. AOL was the big dog.
Hmm.
And so this lady who was there, because we all, stood up and said who we were. And she stood up and she said, I'm so and so with AOL. And she just sat down because AOL was the big dog. So she didn't have to elaborate. now,
Right. Right.
now AOL is like an afterthought, but it
Right.
was back then. It was the big dog. It was the you know
It got
it's
a whole movie. That movie You've Got
yeah
Mail. They used the whole
yeah it's
one of my
it,
favorite movies.
it was a real. I like that movie too. It's cute.
It's so good. It's so relaxing too. I love to
It
because it's like it's oh my goodness. It's narrated. So it's like really relaxing, soothing to me at least to hear a I like narrated movies, but whatever.
oh, okay, but yeah, yeah the whole you've got me. I never had AOL. So I never,
Really?
we always had our company email.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
I never had AOL, um, but they were the big dog back then. So what do you hope to do with the Black Children's Book Week, like going forward? Do you just basically want to be consistent with what you've been doing all along, or do you have some other place you want to take it, or
Well, there's kind of like one other key aspect of Black Children's Book Week that I didn't mention is that my intention was always so back up because an ideas person. I have participated in a lot of pitch competitions, and for other ideas, I've won like thousands of dollars for ideas and stuff like that. And so when I launched Black Children's Book Week, just knowing what it costs Black independent authors to publish our books, I said, I know that like winning $500 would be a good amount of change for an author. If they could say they have a vending event, that could pay for the books for the vending event, that could pay for a flight to a vending event, that could pay
yeah?
for a couple tables. And so that was my intention and launch. Another intention of launching Black Children's Book Week is using part of the proceeds to be able to give back to Black authors. And this year, after this year, and we, as in the Black Children's Book Week sponsors and donors, will have invested $10,000 into Black authors. After
Oh,
this year, it would be
that's
$10,000,
wonderful.
and that's without like corporate funding. This is like it's like 90% Black folks funding Black Children's Book Week, and then there are a couple of small publishers. Shout out to Nosy Crow, that's one of them who like also joined in the celebration. But most of the money is coming from our community and going back to our community. And the other cool thing is that seven of the authors who have won are little kids, so like they're youth authors. So I think one thing I would like to grow that impact. I would love to be able to give more. It will take strategic partnerships to be able to continue to do that. But you can't partner with everybody because, as we're seeing now, like people say they're invested in you, and then let somebody get elected, and they're like, oh, we're getting rid of all the Black businesses we've been working with. So we can't just partner with anybody. It has to be people who are really aligned and have integrity. And integrity is something that's so important. And a lot of people out here are displaying a lot of it. So we got to make sure we find these people with integrity to invest in that part of Black Children's Book Week and in the growth of it. And the only other thing I'm currently contemplating is kind of like a midpoint event. So um, I don't want to ever host anything like during the week because the magic of Black Children's Book Week is people taking action within their community. So it wouldn't make sense for me to be like, I'm going to host a giant event during Black Children's Book Week because people were trying to get there, and that would ruin, I think, the celebration. But I do have a really great idea. This is an idea that I had like before we were quarantined, but I kind of saved it. And it's kind of the excitement and action of a field day that kids had in school. Um, like back in the day, we had field day, and it was like the day we were so excited to go because we played games and we did all the stuff. And we were like, yes, no school, we're at school, but it's not school. So I have a vision that merges the excitement and action-oriented things of a field day with literacy and teaching the adults of our children how to create literate homes. So it's kind of like getting kids so excited about reading that they're begging for books, but finding a creative way to do it. And that is what I'm currently dreaming up. This kind of event would happen in between Black Children's Book Week, but it could also be a time where people who are celebrating could gather in like and build relationships or things like that. And I don't know yet if it's going to be in like one place, if I'm going to create the idea, implement it, and then share it with other people to implement it in their communities. I'm not that far yet, but the vision keeps sticking with me. So now I feel like I have to do it. So we'll see. So that's what I'm thinking about right now. Like, what can we do in between the weeks? Um, but because I have been to like a lot of, I've vended at book fairs, and those are fabulous, especially, people like you who like invest in getting people at the venue. Because sometimes as an author, you spend all this money being a book fair and the people didn't invest in marketing. So it's kind of like you're selling to other authors, so like that's one thing I'm trying to avoid. I don't want to do that. I kind of wanted to do something like more like action oriented, like games, but related to literacy, but
Okay.
also have a space where like authors can, of course, like do readings, but it won't be like the key focus. It'd be more like creating literacy related games that will make kids feel like they're playing, and they are, but they're
But
also
they're
learning.
learning. Okay.
Yeah. I'm really
I
good at that. I'm really good
Yeah,
at like
it's
getting
important.
kids
It's
psyched
important
out.
because not every kid is just gonna read for the sake of reading.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to have something else, some other angle to pull them in. Well,
Yeah.
Veronica, we're at the end of
And I
our
need and I
time.
oh sorry, I was gonna say, and I need to make it to your because you're in the fall, right? You have
Yes,
your
we're in
fair in the
October,
fall.
October 23rd through the 25th this year. So,
23rd to 25th.
you
Okay.
know, just put it on your.
That's my birthday month.
Okay, well, maybe you can give yourself a birthday present.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, thank you so much for coming back, and we're happy to continue to let people know about what you're doing with Black Children's Book Week. I'm sure we'll have you back next year, and
Oh, thank you.
yeah, it's
Thank you so
important.
much.
It's important.
Thank you.
So, thank you again, and have a great evening.
Thank you. And thanks for having me. I'm sorry I'm talking your ear off. All right.
Oh no, no, that's what it's for.
All right.
Okay,
All right.
have a
Thank
great
you.
night.
Bye, you too.